Congratulations, Nikachu. How's it feel to get the trophy in the first Modern Horizons 3 tournament taken down by your pet deck? Played incredibly well, mind you.
Oh yeah, it feels amazing. This is great. But you know what? I have to give a special shout out to all the Nadu players out there for wiping out all my scam opponents. They cleared the way for Merfolk all the way to the finals and a victory. I basically got tons of great matchups all day long. And it was only because apparently Nadu has a great matchup versus scam. Because the only thing I lose to in leagues online when playtesting for this event is scam. Scam, scam, scam. I was like, oh, you ruined my 5-0. Oh, you even ruined my 4-1, and I can beat basically everything else. Or, sorry, and prowess, but like, whatever. That was always a bad matchup.
Dex, the way people used to talk about Merfolk, you're talking about them now. You love to see it. So, what was sort of the big change? Because we had you in the booth earlier with your interview when you made your top 8. You told us about how Harbinger of the Seas, is beating the dog out of these Jeskai control decks, and then you did it in the top 4 in the finals. But what has changed about Merfolk that's allowed it to really take that step up and become, one of the decks that's winning these kind of big events from a deck that kind of didn't have a lot of game, 2 or 3 years ago?
I mean, definitely Harbinger of the Seas is going to elevate it to another level. I mean, it instantly kills all the Urza sagas. It can eat up Tron and Amulet, and it gives free wins. Like in that last game, and I told you, it eats up the control decks, strangely enough. And even in that game, they had a mountain. Usually the mountain is the counter to the Harbinger of the Seas, but it wasn't enough. I mean, like, they have this Superman intensive Flage, but that Flage is useless if you don't have, like, the extra red or white or anything else. And they have a lot of trouble just fetch out basic many times. So you get those basically free wins, and the game sort of turns into a game of how do I get this Harbinger of the Season play and protect it at the same time, which I tried to do in the first game, but I just failed miserably.
Yeah, and I honestly, when we saw the brackets and we saw you in the top 4 and the other side of the bracket too with the Jeskai control deck, I'm gonna be honest with you. I didn't really believe it. I looked at the decks on paper and I thought that the Jeskai control deck was a little bit ahead, and I'm eating my words now. But apparently, Harbinger is just that good. And like even the sink into stupor, being able to bounce the flashback of Flage, like we were thinking that might have come up as well.
Absolutely.
And just a lot of stuff. And I think that matchup is maybe not as bad as it used to be.
No, so long as if you have a plan for Flage, which I do, we have this. That's the thing I was saying about, like, Sink into Stupor is actually better than Flare the Nile, because it can interact on that access. It can interact with, like, flashback cards from Snapcaster Mage. It basically can interact. They exile their entire graveyard for Flage. We bounce it back to their hand. Or just bounce anything that they play. I mean, they tap out all the time for, like, Teferi or the One Ring or this and that, that's a critical turn. Or even for Solitude. So for the versions that use Solitude and pitch a white spell, which they don't have too many of, and I even Sink into Stupor, they still now got to wait for another white source in order to basically take a shot at Harbinger of the Seas again.
Yeah, and that's I think a very astute point, right? Solitude's kind of at a low right now with some of these decks, right? They're Jeskai, but they're really blue-red splashing white for Wrath of the Skies, right? And Flage. So, that is a card. Maybe if you're a control mage, maybe you want to look more towards with this here. But I've got to ask you, I saw you looking online and you were talking about how maybe you're going to cut Aether Vial, and that was something you were talking about. How do you feel about that after this weekend? Because Vial, in some of your matches was great, other times very awkward. Is it still too much of a sacred cow, or do you think there's still a lot of room to explore with the Merfolk deck?
Well, there's definitely a lot of room to explore, but the only reason I would remove Aether Vial was to give me more game versus Scam, because Vial is just awkward, and I want... Vial can be okay versus Scam because it can become a tempo war, but I would prefer to have, like, Lorien revealed instead. Like, give me some opportunity to draw some cards. I'll try to chew up your Bowmaster. I'll try to draw some cards and actually get back into this game. But that would be the only reason. But if Scam is going to be kept in check by Nadu, I'm going to keep the Aether Vials, because Aether Vials is just going to be too important versus Nadu. Versus in the Merfolk mirror, let me tell you, if you have no Aether Vials in the Merfolk mirror, you're doomed. You absolutely have to have Aether Vial in the Merfolk mirror.
Yeah, there was one last question I wanted to ask you, or I guess just kind of mention this one play. There was, I think it was game 2, which was the game where you had the double dockhand, and he had like a fetch land in play, and you get to the spot where you dockhand one of his lands. He cracks the fetch land, gets the basic mountain to play around the player on the Harbinger, and then you just have that whole sequence was kind of wild. Talk to me. What was going on through your head in that situation?
I wanted to see what my opponent was going to do with that scalding. I think it was a scalding tarn because it could
Yep.
fetch a mountain, and so I was like, I just wanted, because they were being patient with this land the entire time, and I was getting to a point where I sort of have to make a move. They're gonna have enough lands to cast their cards, like they're just making their land drops. So I said, okay, it's do or die now. You figure out what you want to do. It like most of the time, I'm guessing they're gonna get the go fetch out a basic mountain. But I don't know. So anyway, I was just trying to force the action and then followed up with Harbinger of the Seas, and then we took it from there.
Nice. Well, so you've won our showdown. That means you got a nice little chunk of change. You're now invited to our end of the year championship event. That's right. Going to be a PTQ as well. And you've won a token. And so I got to ask, are you going to pick what are you going to pick? Are you going to be Merfolk? You're going to be Energy? I got to say this. I know I've watched you play a good bit on Energy now. You're very charismatic. You have a lot of energy.
Oh, yes, I had the whole Yugi thing the entire time. Thank you to all my opponents that tolerated me acting like Yugi-Moto.
Yeah, go back and watch the coverage. We mentioned it.
You fetched a land. That is an activated ability. You have fallen right into my trap with the Tishana's Tidebinder, which counters activated abilities. So I had a lot of fun. Yeah, so I played like that the entire time. I had so much fun, actually, in this tournament, because I would draw like a bomb. I was like, I'm not going to lie to you. I drew the best card in my deck. Usually it didn't matter because I was ahead anyway.
Mm-hmm.
But
nice.
anyway, so in terms of the token,
so you don't have to. It's not locked in now. We just kind of want what the early gut check is.
I mean, maybe some sort of what is my creature that like gives me Island Walk? Tide Shaper. Maybe there's some sort of Tide Shaper token, because this is a visual thing that I constantly need. But other than that, maybe the Hexproof 1/1 Merfolk token, because let me tell you, I accidentally won this tournament. I wasn't expecting to win this tournament. This was a complete accident. But I intend on winning tomorrow, because tomorrow is Pioneer, and I am extremely well prepared. I'm going to unleash, for the first time in a large Pioneer paper event, Merfolk in Pioneer. And let me tell you, I'm not lying, it is better, more powerful in Pioneer than it is in Modern and Legacy combined, even with these Modern Horizon 3 cards. So I'm very excited. And that, like, I make a billion of these 1/1 hexproof tokens in that format.
A fascinating take. I can't wait to see it. Dom Harvey won the back-to-back. Maybe you can as well. But yeah, maybe we can get you a little like forest with you holding a sign that says this is an island. Could be a cute token. We'll get in touch with you on how to do that later. But thank you so much for taking a little bit of time to talk to us. Any shout outs here before you go and get to go enjoy the rest of your night?
Shout out to the Merfolk community. They believed in me the entire time. Shout out to my local game store, Fusion Gaming Online. Shout out to them. And lastly, shout out to NRG Series. I absolutely would not be here without the coverage that exists over here. And I'm going to absolutely I already booked my tickets. I'm going to be there in Chicagoland. I'm going to be there in Indianapolis because, hands down, if you are a person that wants to tell your story at a competitive level, start your story here at NRG Series.
Couldn't say it better myself. Thank you so much, Nikachu, for coming by. It was great to have you. And hopefully we see you make a run for our Player of the Year with going to all the events. That being said, we're going to let you go right now and go and get some dinner and relax before you release the beast, better known as Pioneer Merfolk. So with that all being said, we'll come back to